One of the invitations that we have during the season of Lent is to attend to God's Spirit moving among us. How do we observe it or pay attention to it? It's one of the questions that Martin Smith asks in this season for the Spirit. He says that many times the work of the Spirit happens, we might even say, like against our will. He gives an example of Paul Claudel's story of a lodger who comes to stay in our home, and the lodger doesn't hesitate to move things around, reorient the way the furniture is set up in the house, doesn't hesitate to pull out a hammer and drive a nail into the wall to hang a picture. In fact, if the lodger gets cold, the lodger doesn't even hesitate to take some of the furniture and saw it up to use it for fire, to keep things warm. A bit of a disorientation. As an analogy for the work of the Spirit that comes into our lives as we recognize, and even before we recognize, in order to do the work that the Spirit's always doing around us. A question, of course, is like, well, how do we know? Like, if we are trying to do some work in what's called discernment, how do we know the things that are going on in our life or in our world are things that are of the Spirit? Well, what Smith says about this is that there are two experiences that we might have when the Spirit's at work in us. And one of those is akin to the story of Jesus' baptism, where the Spirit descends either upon or right within Jesus, and he's called the Beloved. That if the Spirit's moving in us, that we have this sense of being loved, being a beloved, part of the family of God. The second sign of the Spirit is that not only do we know that we're loved, but we also are in touch with the suffering of the world, the hardship and the struggle. We feel this sense of push or pull, depending on how you're thinking of it, toward the work of reconciliation in a struggling world. What happens sometimes is that we anesthetize ourselves, Smith says. We anesthetize ourselves against both of those things. The sense that so fundamentally we are loved, and we anesthetize ourselves against the hurt of the world. And so what he wants to say, when we do that, we don't experience a fullness of joy, and nor are we open to this full experience of hurt, sorrow in the world. So he says that when the Spirit is moving among us, the anesthetic begins to wear off. So perhaps as we take this walk through Lent, we can have the experience of coming out of our anesthetic state to a more full, vibrant life, in touch with love, being loved and the hurt of the world, our life's hurts and those of the people around us. I'll bring us into a meditation. And in this prayerful, imaginative meditation, maybe we imagine that we're sitting at the doctor's office or heading into a surgery, and we receive the anesthetic. It puts us to sleep. Some time passes, whatever procedure we're in for is successfully completed. And slowly the anesthesia begins to wear off. We start to regain our consciousness, our awareness of what's going on around us. What does it feel like to have the anesthesia begin to work its way out of our system? To come back to a conscious life, an observing life. And can that wearing off of the anesthetic, can it serve as a template for us just for the next few minutes or hours, or maybe we'd even stretch it to a day, where there's a more vibrant and connected sense of being alive? More honesty with ourselves and with others. More capacity for love and for hurt. For that anesthetic wearing off might just be a sign God's Spirit's moving among us. Blessings on your day as we find God in these times of COVID. Today is the 22nd day of February.